every week on my Instagram, I run a Q&A with my followers. They ask me their questions about how gender equality and oppression is affecting them in their world, and I answer. If you join me on Instagram every week, you can take part in the Q&A, ask your own questions, get your answers, get involved. How do we get men to understand the mental load without taking on more emotional labor? I have so much to say about this. Strap yourself in. This is an age-old question, I feel. Educating men about emotional and mental labor is emotional and mental labor. In much the same way that delegating a task to someone but then having to remind them to do that task means you've basically just done the task, having to educate someone about mental load is just you taking on more mental load. For anyone who doesn't know what the mental load is, it's basically that administrative, organizational, and operations planning task load of managing a household and/or a family. So the mental load shows up in things like remembering appointments and setting reminders and remembering birthdays and coming up with an idea for and purchasing the gift, keeping a mental list of the groceries and doing the meal planning, even if you're not the one who's cooking. So the mental load is basically the project managing of your household, and it usually falls to women. So while men get paid quite handsomely to go and be presumably competent project managers in the workplace, those same men can come home and beg weaponized incompetence and that they're just naturally not good at organizing the stuff that the household needs done. But if you need your mental load reduced and you still want to maintain a good faith relationship with this person, then I guess you're going to need some strategies. So your question was, how do we get men to understand the mental load without having to do more emotional labor? And do you know how much I wanted to answer you like this? Stop doing it. Stop doing the mental load and let him watch as his household and his social life crumbles into the ocean like a Sydney Northern Beaches cliffside mansion. But that would be brinkmanship. It reminds me of a story that was relayed on another feminist account last week where a woman had said that she was at a point where she could no longer do all of the household load she was doing, and she decided that the task she was going to have to let go of was laundry. She went to her husband and she said, I don't know how the laundry's going to get done, but it's not going to be me. So here is an option for how much it costs to get our laundry done by someone else. And he balked at this. He saw the cost and he went, nah, no way. But he didn't offer to do the laundry himself. So she had to then basically refuse to do no laundry whatsoever. For 2 weeks, they had no clean laundry until he obviously cracked it, took the message and started doing the laundry, learned how to do it, and has been doing it ever since. But I should stress, this kind of brinkmanship doesn't usually work. And even when it does, it usually fractures the relationship. So you're going to have to try a non-confrontational, good faith approach that assumes that, say, this one man in particular is willing to learn. And I cannot tell you how much I fucking resent that we have to wheedle and coddle and gently, softly coax men into understanding that we need to have our basic needs met and are human. So there are a couple of resources I'm going to share with you which you can hopefully sit down with and work through with the person whose behavior you're trying to change. The first is a couple of comics by a French illustrator writer called Emma, who went quite viral a few years ago. So I'm going to incorporate them somehow into this slide and link them for you. Maybe I'll green screen some of them here, and I highly recommend you go check them out. A lot of women have used them to spark that conversation with a man and have found that they really helped the man to understand, I guess in their simplicity or the way that they're laid out, but I think you'll find them really useful too. And then I would also direct you to the Fair Play book by Eve Rodsky, which is specifically, I think, about domestic labor, but these things can apply. It's a way for couples to work out how to get more equitable distribution of domestic labor in their households. I guess what I will conclude by saying is that you can try to get him to understand and to change and to help. But I think you also need to set yourself a boundary, whether that is time delimited or based on a specific task or a set of tasks or done at a certain frequency consistently for a certain period of time, where if he is still not pulling his weight, you need to do the most self-respecting thing that you can do. Respect your energy, respect your time, and respect your future, and make the decision to leave. So how do you deal with a sexist, misogynist mother-in-law? My take is, it is your husband's job to manage the relationship with his own mother and to set and reinforce the boundaries with her. That is his emotional labor to do. It is his relationship with her, and you shouldn't have to spend all of your emotional labor trying to manage that boundary. You do have to express the boundary yourself at least once. You have to make a good faith effort to establish boundaries with this person and make sure that you're showing them that you respect the relationship enough to talk to them yourself. But the task really falls on your husband to set down, stipulate, and enforce the respecting of that boundary. It needs to be your husband's job to manage her and to say in no uncertain terms that you, his wife, are entitled to your own boundaries, that she needs to stop making comments of this nature, and then he needs to reinforce those boundaries. And if he doesn't do this, if he leaves it to you to do all of the emotional labor of managing this quite tense relationship, this difficult, complicated relationship, then I think that you need to consider that even though you may be in a relationship where you're not having to do all of the cooking, for example, you are still in a relationship with a man who thinks that you should be doing the vast bulk of the labor. And perhaps on the cooking, it's a task that he is willing to help with, but he's not seeing the full picture of all of the different types of labor that you are being obligated to do. You are fully entitled to work out the division of domestic labor in your household in a way that suits you and suits the relationship and is equitable and fair. She does not have to have and is not entitled to any opinion about that, and your husband needs to defend you in this case. How to respond to men when they say things like she was asking for it. You ask them back. Asking for what? How did she phrase it? Did she ask nicely? Did she ask more than once? What exactly did she ask for? How did she put it? How did she indicate her consent to this? Truly, when a man says something misogynistic, you just probe and ask more questions about what they have said, because what tends to happen is you'll get right down into the fine weave of the assumptions and the beliefs underpinning the thing that they have said. And you basically force them to out into the open the most misogynistic and vile and ghoulish underpinning of those societal assumptions that help to maintain misogynistic jokes and misogynistic statements. You're basically forcing them to say the quiet part out loud and embarrass themselves. And then they'll hopefully go away and think about it. And then possibly the most useful thing when clapping back to misogyny is to really develop your muscle for imagining an analogous metaphor, right? So we've seen some great metaphors in the past. There's that one where men say not all men, and then this person tweeted here's an idea. We lock men in a room full of snakes and we say not all snakes are venomous. And then there's that fantastic tea metaphor, tea and consent, where people understand consent when it comes to offering someone a cup of tea. You offer someone a cup of tea, they say no, you don't force it on them. They say yes, but they stop wanting to drink it halfway through. You don't force them to drink the rest. If you can develop this ability to come up with an analogous iteration of that idea, you can really help to lay out the hypocrisy in the moral code of the argument or the misogynistic statement that a man is making. I really hope that helps. Let me know if you try it. What is a good feminist book for men? All the current and historical feminist books are feminist books for men. Men need to read the writing of women, and there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of deeply intelligent feminist scholars and philosophers and narrative writers who have already done that work, and that is the stuff that men can read. So get your husband to follow feminists on social media. Get your husband to follow me on Instagram. Just kidding, although I do have a story highlight on my Instagram, which is called the Feminist Library. So if you do want him to do some reading into the subject, he could check out that library and then check back in about what he's learning. That's it for this Q&A. Thank you so much for listening. Do you love exclusive content that's just for you and to sticky beak inside other people's lives? If so, please consider subscribing to my Instagram. Your subscription to my Instagram is less than $5 a month, and that gets you guaranteed answers in the weekly Q&A, which is absolutely not the case for non-subscribers. It also gets you subscriber-only content and a peek inside my life, how I live, laugh, lol in a feminist way. But personally, my favorite thing is the guaranteed answers in the Q&As. I love being able to tell my subscribers that any question they ask me every week will absolutely get answered. So go to my Instagram and hit the subscribe button. Find me on Instagram at summertothill, that's summer with an O, spelt the same way as you see in this YouTube channel. I can't wait to see you there.